In his incisive work, Middle East Illusions, renowned scholar Noam Chomsky takes an unflinching look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Chomsky challenges conventional narratives, exposing uncomfortable truths often obscured by political rhetoric and media bias. He meticulously dissects the historical, political, and ideological underpinnings of this intractable conflict, urging readers to confront the illusions that perpetuate it. Chomsky's analysis is not merely academic. It carries profound implications for the human cost of this enduring conflict. Chomsky's central argument revolves around the stark disparity between the professed goals of key actors, particularly Israel, and the reality on the ground. He argues that the pursuit of these illusory goals has fueled violence, undermined genuine peace efforts, and exacerbated the humanitarian crisis in the region. Through rigorous documentation and sharp analysis, Chomsky encourages readers to critically engage with the dominant narratives surrounding the Middle East. He invites us to look beyond the headlines and confront the root causes of this seemingly intractable conflict. One of the most enduring illusions Chomsky tackles is the notion of a viable two-state solution. While this concept has gained international acceptance as the most plausible path to peace, Chomsky argues that it has been systematically undermined by Israel's actions. He points to the continued expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, effectively eroding the territorial contiguity necessary for a viable Palestinian state. Chomsky argues that these actions, coupled with Israel's control over borders, water resources, and airspace, render the two-state solution practically impossible. Chomsky's analysis is particularly relevant in the aftermath of the Hamas attacks in October 2023. These attacks, while condemned globally, have been used by Israel to further justify its security concerns and harden its stance against a Palestinian state. Chomsky argues that this cycle of violence and retribution only serves to entrench the status quo, making a just and sustainable peace even more elusive. He posits that the international community's continued endorsement of the two-state solution, without addressing Israel's rejection of its fundamental tenets, is a form of complicity in perpetuating the conflict. The Gaza Strip stands as a stark embodiment of the human cost of these illusions. Chomsky describes Gaza as an open-air prison, subjected to a crippling blockade and repeated military incursions. He argues that Israel's justifications for these actions, primarily framed around security concerns, mask a broader strategic goal of maintaining control over Palestinian land and resources. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with its dire poverty, food insecurity, and collapsing healthcare system, is a direct consequence of this ongoing siege. Despite the overwhelming asymmetry of power, Chomsky highlights the resilience of the Palestinian people in resisting occupation. He argues that this resistance, often misconstrued as inherent Palestinian hostility, is a predictable response to decades of dispossession and oppression. Chomsky contends that without addressing these root causes, and without holding Israel accountable for its actions, the cycle of violence and suffering in Gaza will persist. He urges the international community to move beyond condemnations and take concrete steps to lift the blockade, address the humanitarian crisis, and pressure Israel to end its occupation. Central to Chomsky's analysis is the unveiling of what he sees as Israel's long-term strategic goals. He points to the 1996 policy document, A Clean Break, which advocated for Israel to abandon the peace process and instead assert regional dominance through the destabilization of its neighbors. Chomsky argues that this document, though officially disavowed, has served as a blueprint for Israeli policy in the decades since. He cites Israel's actions in Syria, Lebanon, and Iran as evidence of this strategy in action. Chomsky contends that Israel's pursuit of regional hegemony, coupled with its continued occupation of Palestinian territories, is inherently unsustainable. He argues that this approach fuels instability, radicalizes populations, and undermines the possibility of a lasting peace. Chomsky's analysis challenges the conventional narrative that portrays Israel solely as a victim of regional aggression. Instead, he presents a more nuanced view, acknowledging Israel's legitimate security concerns, while also highlighting its role in perpetuating regional instability. Section 5. A world watching international scrutiny and Israeli anxiety. Despite its military and economic power, Chomsky argues that Israel remains acutely sensitive to international public opinion. He points to Israel's efforts to control the narrative surrounding its actions, particularly in Gaza, as evidence of this sensitivity. Chomsky highlights Israel's attempts to discredit international human rights organizations, its restrictions on media access to conflict zones, and its lobbying efforts to influence foreign policy. Chomsky argues that this sensitivity stems from Israel's awareness of the inherent contradiction between its self-portrayal as a liberal democracy and its treatment of the Palestinians. He contends that this contradiction is becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile, as evidenced by growing international criticism of Israel's policies. Chomsky suggests that this growing scrutiny, while currently insufficient to effect meaningful change, holds the potential to shift the balance of power and pressure Israel towards a more just and sustainable approach. Section 6. Echoes of Orientalism, Chomsky, Said, and Dabashi. Chomsky's critique of Western discourse on the Middle East resonates with the work of scholars like Edward Said and Hamid Dabashi. Said, in his seminal work Orientalism, argued that Western representations of the East have historically been shaped by colonial biases, depicting the region as inherently backward and incapable of self-governance. Chomsky echoes this critique, arguing that Western media often portrays the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through a simplistic lens that ignores the power dynamics and historical context. Similarly, Hamid Dabashi, in his book The End of Two Illusions, challenges the dominant narrative of a clash of civilizations between Islam and the West. Dabashi argues that this narrative is a form of cultural essentialism that ignores the diversity within both Islam and the West. Chomsky's work aligns with this critique, emphasizing the role of Western imperialism and Israeli expansionism in fueling conflict and instability in the Middle East. Section 7. Beyond the Battlefield, the Human Cost of Illusion. While Chomsky's analysis is deeply rooted in geopolitics and international relations, he never loses sight of the human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He poignantly portrays the suffering of ordinary people on both sides, highlighting the devastating impact of violence, displacement, and the denial of basic human rights. Chomsky humanizes the conflict, moving beyond abstract political arguments to reveal the profound toll it takes on individuals, families, and communities. Chomsky's focus on the human dimension of the conflict serves as a powerful reminder that behind the headlines and political maneuvering lie real lives shattered by violence and injustice. He underscores the urgency of finding a just and lasting peace, not only for the sake of regional stability, but also for the well-being of millions of people caught in the crossfire. Section 8. The Path Forward, Towards a Just and Lasting Peace. While Chomsky's analysis of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is unsparing in its critique of Israeli policies and Western complicity, he does offer a glimmer of hope for a more just and peaceful future. He argues that genuine peace can only be achieved through a fundamental shift in power dynamics, one that recognizes the equal humanity and rights of both Palestinians and Israelis. Chomsky advocates for a solution based on international law and respect for human rights. He calls for an end to the occupation, a just resolution to the refugee issue, and the establishment of a truly democratic and inclusive state for all its citizens. Chomsky acknowledges that achieving such a transformation will require immense courage, political will, and a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained assumptions and prejudices. Section 9. Conclusion: Unmasking the Future. Middle East Illusions is a sobering yet essential read. Chomsky's meticulous research, insightful analysis, and unwavering commitment to justice provide a powerful antidote to the simplistic narratives that often dominate discussions of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. By shattering these illusions, Chomsky compels us to confront the complexities of this enduring conflict and to demand a more just and peaceful future for all. His work serves as a call to action for individuals, policymakers, and the international community to move beyond rhetoric and take concrete steps towards a future where Palestinians and Israelis can coexist in peace, security, and dignity. While the path ahead is fraught with challenges, Chomsky's unwavering belief in the possibility of a just and sustainable peace offers a beacon of hope in a region mired in conflict.